This video presents the highlights of our 15-day cruise tour of the British Isles. Our cruise was on the Princess Cruise Line's 2,600 passenger ship named Golden Princess. Now to the itinerary. We flew from San Francisco to London, England on Virgin Atlantic Airlines. We then spent 3 days in London, touring the city and the surrounding area. From London, we were bused to Southampton, England, where we boarded the Golden Princess. That afternoon, we sailed down the English Channel, across the Celtic Sea, and up St. George's Channel to our first port of call, Dublin, Ireland. From there, we crossed the Channel to our next port of call, Holyhead, Wales. Then it was back across the Irish Sea to Belfast, Northern Ireland. We then crossed the North Channel and docked at Greenock, Scotland, which is located but a short distance from Glasgow. From there it was a day at sea to Kirkwall, Scotland, which is located in the Orkney Islands. Our next and last port of call was South Queensferry, Scotland. This port provided access to Edinburgh. It was then a day at sea prior to our disembarkation at Southampton. We were then bused to Heathrow Airport, where we boarded a Virgin Atlantic 747 aircraft for a non-stop flight home. Here we are at the San Francisco Airport, awaiting our flight on Virgin Atlantic to London, and that's the 747 that we'll be flying in. There's Lois, all ready to get on the airplane. Virgin Atlantic's pre-takeoff announcement was so clever that I took the opportunity of videoing excerpts of it. It was displayed in the individual seat back monitor that each of us had.
You need to adjust the elasticated strap. You should fit your own mask before helping others.
The jacket, and while seated, slip it over your head. Fasten the straps around your waist and tie securely with a double bow at the side.
Smaller life jackets for children will be fitted by the cabin crew, and flotation costs for babies will be distributed.
When using the slides, please make sure you remove your high-heeled shoes.
Now please check that your seatbelts are tightly fastened. Your seat must be in the upright position with the armrest down. Any tray tables must be folded away. Where fitted, the leg rest must be retracted, and movable TV monitors should be put away correctly.
Please ensure your mobile phone is turned off for the duration of the flight. All other electronic equipment should be switched off or takeoff. Finally, we ask you all to please study the safety card, which is in your seat pocket. It gives full information on the operation of the exits and the location of life jackets, slides and rafts on this aircraft.
Thank you for your attention. We hope you enjoy your flight with Virgin Atlantic.
The individual seat back monitors not only provided us the opportunity to play games, but it kept us informed as to our position. We're now on our final approach to Heathrow Airport, which is located just outside of London. We're on the ground, and from there we were bused to the hotel that we would be staying at, which is the Millennium Hotel. And that's a view looking across the street at the park. The hotel is located in Grosvenor Square, which is just a block from the U.S. Embassy. We're now in the lobby, went up to our room, and there on the bed was the breakfast menu. And were we shocked, because a continental breakfast was listed at £17.95, and that's equivalent to $31.83. Food in England is really expensive. Well, after a good night's sleep, here it is, Monday, August 8th. Got up, and today we'll be taking a tour of London. Our first stop was here at Westminster Abbey, the foundation of which dates back to over 1,000 years. Since the crowning of William the Conqueror here in 1066, the Abbey has been the nation's coronation church. It's also the burial and memorial place of numerous famous figures. This is the Poets' Corner. Some of the great writers, playwrights, and poets of the past 150 years are commemorated by floor plaques. They include Tennyson, Chaucer, Shakespeare, Dickens, to name but a few. In the same area is this beautiful rose window. This is the chapel of Henry VII, also known as the Lady Chapel. It was regarded as a wonder of the world when it was built in the 1500s and still is today. Henry VII is buried here in an elaborate tomb. The chapel is roofed with a breathtaking, intricate, and finely detailed fan-vaulted ceiling. Just a beautiful ceiling. From the Abbey, we then crossed the Thames River. The building to the left is the Parliament Building. This tower houses Big Ben, which of course is a symbol of England. The Green Bridge is the Westminster Bridge. We'll cross it in just a moment. This is a Ferris wheel, and we were told that it's the largest in the world. It has a 450-foot diameter and was built to celebrate the millennium. As we crossed the bridge and went down the opposite side of the Thames, we had a good view of the Houses of Parliament. It was built some 1,000 years ago and is the seat of the power for British government. There's Big Ben. Now we're heading to see the Horse Guards.
It's a ceremonial guard that's always here, called the Horse Guards. It's the site of Whitehall Palace here, where King Henry VIII died. Much of the palace burnt down in the 1690s. Nobody has actually told us the guard. They're still here guarding nothing.
Our next stop was at Buckingham Palace, which is the official residence of Queen Elizabeth II. It was built in 1702 by the first Duke of Buckingham, and it has a priceless collection of paintings, furniture, and antiques. Since the Queen was not there, the palace was open for tours and there were lots of people there. We then went past the Wellington Arch, Hyde Park, and to our last stop, which was Trafalgar Square. It is dominated by the statue of Admiral Nelson, who was killed during his victorious battle against Napoleon's navy off Trafalgar in Spain. The year was 1805. Across from the square is the National Gallery. We had lunch there and viewed exhibits. It was then a walk back to the hotel. This lonely guard was standing at a rear entrance to where the horse guards were. And take a look here. They now have the streets marked so you don't get run over. Well, here we are back at the hotel. Went to bed, got up the next morning, and here it is, Tuesday, August 9th. Today we're going to have a full-day tour of the Cotswolds. Our first stop was the beautiful old town of Burford, which was the site of a fort over the River Windrush in Anglo-Saxon times. Just off the main street was this church, the Beaufort Church. It dates back to 1175. It was said that many of the parishioners were wool merchants and that they had altered and enlarged the church. We were told that in the 1660s, the churchyard began to take on its present look. The bale tombs, rounded tops, are symbolic of bales of wool. Such tombs were associated with the wool merchant families. We're now back on Sheep Street, which is the main street. It's only about 2 blocks long. It has cobblestone walks. And here we're looking back into one of the alleyways. We're now headed back to the bus. We're going to be going to Burton on the Water, which is called the Venice of the Cotswolds. Lots of families enjoying this delightful village. It was a gorgeous day, and we had lunch right there along the river. Such a peaceful place to sit and enjoy a wonderful lunch. We next visited the village of Broadway, which was once an important staging post on the coach route between London and Worcester. Look at this charming store. I wonder what they're selling that's unique to this area. Oh my goodness, it's a Thomas Kinkade. How about that? They're everywhere. We next went to Woodstock to visit Blenheim Palace, which was the birthplace of Sir Winston Churchill. It was built in the early 18th century for the first Duke of Marlborough and stands in a magnificent 2,000-acre park. We've now just come through that entrance and are here in the great courtyard. The courtyard is immense. The mansion covers 3 sides of this courtyard. That is the main area, although the current Duke of Marlborough lives here, and when he's in residence, his flag flies. Since he was in residence that day, this is his flag. This is a view of the park area from the open end of the courtyard. We then went into a wing of the residence for tea and scones. We ate them out here on the patio, overlooking spectacular gardens and fountain areas. The palace is on UNESCO's World Heritage List, and as such is a vital part of Britain's living history. The present Duke of Marlborough is committed to preserving the traditions of the palace, and as such he's opened it to many events which help pay for the upkeep and maintenance of the palace. Well, that completed our day's tour of the Cotswolds. We headed on back to the hotel, got a good night's sleep, got up the next morning, and here it is, Wednesday, August 10th. Today we're going to be bused to Southampton, England, where we'll board Princess Cruise Line's 2,600 passenger ship named Golden Princess. It's 950 feet long, and the width is 118 feet. It has 1,150 crew members to serve us. Here is what we saw as we walked around the ship. It was a very elegant ship. By the way, these video clips were extracted from several Princess Cruises videos.
It floats back to you.
This structure on the stern was a nightclub. You got there by a catwalk. This is the catwalk, and now you're inside.
The love boat promises something for everyone. Set a course for adventure, your mind on a new romance. And love won't hurt anymore. It's an open smile on a friendly shore. It's love. Welcome aboard, it's love.
We're now at our cabin, and on our bed is the Princess Patter, which is the daily guide to the activities. Well, after settling into the cabin and unpacking, we went out on our balcony to see the sights. Well, it's time for the sail away, and we're going to enjoy that on our balcony. That's the pilot boat. The pilot's aboard, and he'll take charge to get us safely out of the harbor. Then the pilot boat will come alongside and pick him up, and he'll go back to the port. It seems like a lot of activity going out of the harbor, particularly since it's Wednesday. All different kinds of boats. We got a lot of waves, as you can see. We thoroughly enjoyed the sail away, and since we didn't have dinner until 8 o'clock, we had time to relax and enjoy the sunset. Just when you think it couldn't get any prettier, it did. Well, then it was off to bed, got up the next morning, and here it is, Thursday, August 11th. Today we'll be at sea, traveling 429 miles to Dublin, Ireland. Right now it's early afternoon, and we're just rounding Land's End, as shown in the TV monitor in our cabin. This was a nice feature since when we went out on the balcony, we knew what we were looking at least most of the time, and that is Land's End. Another nice feature on the cabin TV was the Travel Channel, which presented an overview of each of the tours that were offered.
As you tour the castle with its unique combination.
We then did some more exploring of the ship. This is the pool at the stern of the ship, and it was a great day, as you can see here. Kind of nice out today.
Beautiful day. Excellent.
Later that day, in the evening,
Here, come over here with
we
me.
got ready for
Better way to do
the
it.
captain's cocktail party.
Okay, smile.
You're on candid camera.
Right, okay.
The cocktail party was held here in the ship's atrium. These clips were extracted from the ship's DVD covering this event. Here's a quick shot of Stephen and Claire. Here's Lois and I raising our glasses. Well, after the captain's cocktail party, we went off to dinner, then did a little dancing, went to bed, got up the next day, and here it is, Friday, August 12th. Today is our first port of call, and it's Dublin, Ireland. We are scheduled to dock around 8 a.m., and we're going to be taking a tour out in the country today. That's the dock area. The gangway's on the other side of the ship. There's the buses, so let's go ashore.
The weather's a bit cool this morning, but it's going to be nice.
We're now in the city of Dublin, which is the capital of Ireland. It's situated on this river named Liffey. We will be driving through the outskirts of Dublin to the countryside estate named Powerscourt. Lois and I started our tour in what they call the walled garden. The house is in the background. These gardens actually go back to the 1700s. The estate itself was once a castle way back in the 1300s, and it wasn't until the 1800s when a mansion was built around the shell of the earlier castle. They had several large hothouses and an extensive array of flowers. We're now in what they call the Italian gardens. A series of terraces linked the house to the lake. Those life-size winged horses guarding the lake are part of the family coat of arms, and they were made in Berlin in 1869. This is the upper terrace, which has marble with intricate designs and a number of bronze statues. We're now looking back at the upper terrace. This alcove is just beneath the upper terrace, and it has what they call spitting men, originally from Milan and bought in Paris in 1872. Between them is a sundial which reads, "I only mark the sunny hours." This is a view from that alcove looking towards the lake. The terraces were constructed during the 1840s, and they took over 100 men 12 years to complete. And there's a view looking back at the mansion. And here's Lois down at the bottom terrace looking at the winged horses. We completed our time here at Powers Court by having some tea and scones, and then taking a quick view of the inside. Then it was back across the bridge to our ship, and look here what was on the door of one of the adjacent cabins. We turned our TV set on in the cabin, and you can see we're going to leave Dublin at 1:30 a.m. Needless to say, we won't be watching our departure or also seeing the next sunrise. We may very well see the sunset, though. It's now approaching 5:10 p.m., and I hear a commotion in the balcony beneath us.
People you had in your cabin is too many people.
All right.
And we look forward to the Irish Cabaret Dinner Show.
It's gonna be fun.
Presenting all of Santa Rosa on this trip.
Okay.
As Claire indicated, tonight we're going into Dublin to a traditional Irish Cabernet where we'll have dinner and see a show. Our dinner started with cream of fresh vegetable soup.
Cheers. Already. You already.
We're ready for the party.
We're gonna go for it.
The teacher says now.
The main course was a choice of herb-crusted prime Irish beef or baked supreme of corn-fed chicken.
Okay, now, according to her diagram with the D, I should eat this. Good.
Well, I had the beef and it was good. Now to the show. Since we were asked not to tape the show, I purchased a tape of the Irish comedian who was hilarious, and here are some clips of his performance.
Then there were two more girls made at 9, then the 10th one was a boy. A boy, the 10th one was a boy, missus. A boy, the 10th one. And his name was Weewaw. I'm not surprised you're laughing. It's a very strange name for an Irish lad, Weewaw. But my mother christened him Weewaw because he was boarding in the ambulance and the emergency siren went off. You know, Weewaw, Weewaw, Weewaw. And Weewaw, God love him, he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. He came around to my place last week and his two ears were all bandaged up. I says, what happened to your ears, Weewaw? He said, I was doing a bit of ironing yesterday. He said, I was pressing some clothes. He said, the telephone rang and I picked up the iron by mistake. And I says, what happened to the other ear? He says, I had to call him back.
The entertainment also included Irish dancers. These were not the ones that we saw at the Cabernet. They were on the ship. The after-dinner show was really great. Lasted about 2 hours, and it had quite a selection of music, song, Irish dance, and of course, laughter. Lots of laughter. After the dinner and show, we got back on the bus and headed back to our ship. And we went to bed, got up the next morning, and here it is, Saturday, August 13th. Today we're going to be visiting Holyhead, Wales. We're going to be arriving around 7 a.m. It's not quite 7 and we're still underway to Holyhead, which is on the island of Anglesey, located at the northernmost part of Wales. Judging from what we see, it looks like it's going to be a rainy day. We're now coming into the harbor, and we're not going to dock. We'll anchor and take these tenders ashore. Well, they've called our tour, so we'll head on down, get aboard the tender.
He's looking to see what is leaking.
Should I now say, Croeso I Cymru? Welcome to Wales. And instead of good morning, it is Bore da, but it doesn't make it any the drier. But you're all exceedingly welcome, and we will hope for finer things.
Our first stop would be at Carnarvon Castle, which played a key role in England's long struggle for dominion over Wales. It was built by Edward I in 1283 and was constructed not only as a military stronghold, but also as a seat of government and royal palace. Here we are inside Carnarvon Castle's walls, and boy was it raining. We're in what they call the upper ward, and gee, look how it would be on a nice, warm, sunny day. It would be gorgeous. But back to reality. In spite of the weather, we really enjoyed the tour. Our guide was so good, took us down through these passageways. We strolled the battlements atop the gray stone walls and viewed an interesting film on its history.
You are among the hundreds of thousands who come every year to the castle to see and absorb its history. 700 years ago, of course, it was built to give protection to those inside it and to deter the rush outside the walls. But now, that has all changed. And those of us who are custodians have seen it become a place of intrigue and pleasure. These great castles, built by Edward I around Snowdonia, are now World Heritage Sites. Carnarvon, Harlech, Beaumaris, Conwy, Rhuddlan and Flint are the finest examples of medieval castle building to be seen anywhere.
The film highlighted that the courtyard was where Prince Charles was invested as Prince of Wales in 1969.
Prince Charles paid homage to the Queen, a reminder of the reason for the construction of this castle so long before.
I, Charles, Prince of Wales, do become your liege man of life and limb.
The new Prince of Wales contemplates his realm.
After the movie, we exited the castle through the King's Gate to the main street of Carnarvon. Well, the weather improved, and we had lunch at this hotel. And then just down the block was this B&B. It sure had some gorgeous flowers. Then right across the street was this church. At least that's what I thought it was, until I saw a sign that said it was an arcade. Our guide told us that many of the churches have been abandoned due to the lack of church attendance and monetary support. What a shame. We then enjoyed our ride through the countryside and into Snowdonia Mountains. We then stopped to take photographs of the Telford Bridge, which separates the island from mainland Wales. The last stop was here at this charming Welsh village that is known by its name, Llanfairpwll, but its full name is 58 letters long.
And that's translated in English. St. Mary's Church in Hull over White Hazel, near Trafford Whirlpool or San Cecilio by the cave.
The sign is on almost every commercial building. The 58-letter name of this little village has certainly made this village famous, as evidenced by the number of tour buses that were there and the amount of people in the gift store. I asked our bus driver to pronounce the name of the town again.
Llanfair Pwllgwyngyll, Gorgerich, Llyn-Drobwyll, Sant Ceciliae, Goch.
Well, that completed our tour of Holyhead. We're now on the tender and we're heading back to the Golden Princess. And that's one of the tenders being pulled up. Wow, there's a sea lion. It's just about 6:30 p.m. The pilot's aboard, and it's just about time to weigh the anchor. There's the pilot's boat ready to follow us out of the harbor and pick up the pilot. It was a dinner and a show. Off to bed, got up the next morning, and here it is, Sunday, August 14th. Today's port is Belfast, which is the capital of Northern Ireland and a part of the United Kingdom. We docked around 8 a.m. There was a lot of activity at the port, boats coming and going. This ship, which was backing into a terminal, was operated by one of the largest ferry companies in the world. Their fleet of 34 ships last year carried over 17 million passengers and 3 million vehicles. Just across from where we were docked was the huge shipyard, Harland and Wolff. At one time, it was the largest shipyard in the world, although today it's best remembered for being the birthplace of the ship Titanic. The moving crane that you see there is really huge. They call it Samson and Goliath. Some say that it is to Belfast as the Eiffel Tower is to Paris. Well, it's time for lunch, and then it'll be off on a tour.
My name is Chris Murphy. I'm your guide this afternoon. We've got about 4 hours to see what we can see.
We're downtown, and you can see the mixture of old and modern buildings. We're now at the City Hall, where there's a number of monuments. This is a poignant memorial to the Titanic, which was built at the shipyard just across from where our ship was docked.
The Titanic hit the iceberg on its maiden voyage from Southampton to New York. That was 93 years ago. There are still a number of people alive today that were on board the ship that fateful night. 2,200 passengers, 1,500 souls lost. A lady who was with me this morning said she met a woman who was on board the Titanic. She met her only 4 weeks ago.
We next made a photo stop at the Queen's University, which is the most prestigious in Northern Ireland. Just a few blocks away was Belfast's Botanical Gardens. Just a beautiful place. And it was neat to see the sun out so we could enjoy it.
This is Belfast Botanical Gardens on the south side of Belfast, close to the Queen's University. And this particular building, the Palm House, was built in 1837. It's the earliest piece of architecture of its kind, the first time that curved glass and curved steel have been used together. A Dublin glazier and a Belfast metal worker teamed up to form this curved glass, curved metal structure. So it's the earliest Palm House in the world.
It truly was a beautiful structure. We went inside and enjoyed looking at the tropical flowers as well as the flowers of the local area. When we got back on the bus, our guide talked about the city's long and turbulent history. That is, the decades-old troubles between the Catholics and the Protestants. He indicated that it's better, but it still will take many years to resolve. As we drove through some of the neighborhoods, we saw houses painted to proclaim a neighborhood's political affiliation.
These ugly murals with pictures of men in balaclavas pointing guns, which I think are very scary and sinister. Artistic they may be, but sinister they most certainly are.
Our drive through the city and residential area took us out here to Stormont Estate, which at one time was a castle. It now serves as the Belfast headquarters of the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. A beautiful building. Our last stop was out on the Ards Peninsula, which is a narrow finger of land that has the Irish Sea on one side of it. Our destination was the small village of Grey Abbey, where we will visit the ruins of a 12th century abbey. This plaque showed what the church and cloister looked like back in the 1100s, and here's what it looks like today. By the way, it was said that this is the first true Gothic church in Ireland. We're now standing in front of the north entrance to the church. We will now go inside through the nave. We're now inside. And a book that I bought on the Grey Abbey showed a picture, this picture, of how it might look when the monks were inside worshiping back in the year 1200. Legend has it that the abbey was founded by the daughter to the King of Man in thanksgiving for surviving a storm at sea. There's Lois. She's pointing out the significance of a carving.
That's what the architect that drew up the plans thought the cross looked like. So that's what he projected.
We're now on the other side of the abbey, and this graveyard is not where the monks were buried, for their graves were marked with simple stone flat slabs. We're now back on the ship. We're going to be departing Belfast a little after 6 p.m. That's an interesting ship. Looks like a small tug. Somebody's aboard it, videoing our ship. We're now underway, and here's the pilot boat. Gets a little bit of the waves from our ship. He'll be picking the pilot up and taking him back to Belfast. Well, that completed the day. Got up the next morning, and here it is, Monday, August 15th. Our port of call today is Greenock, Scotland. We're going to be arriving just a little before 8 a.m. We will be taking an all-day tour today.
Welcome to Scotland, welcome to Greenock. My name's Kit Lindsay, and our driver is Stuart. We hope to take you a nice scenic journey.
From our ship, it was about a 30-minute ride to here, which is Hunter's Quay. We're going to be taking that ferry and cross the River Clyde. There's our bus, and there's a ferry coming the other way.
That we were looking across to as Dunoon.
Our first stop is here at Inverary Castle. It is the hereditary seat for the Dukes of Argyll. It dates back to the 1770s and is the home of the Clan Campbell, who dominated huge tracts of southern highlands. This is the entrance. The gentleman coming out had a kilt on, and he told me it was from his clan. The flowers were just beautiful. What are the pink ones? The ones, yes.
Double petunias.
I've never seen them that big.
Beautiful. I mean, normally a petunia is just a nice little flower, but these are double petunias. And the begonias.
Those begonias. Oh. Well, thank you. We then had a tour of a number of the rooms of the castle. Some of the rooms were off limits since the castle is not just a showplace. It's the family home of the 13th Duke of Argyll. Judging from some photographs, he appears to be in his 40s. One of the most fascinating rooms was the armory. It contained a display of over 1,300 wall-mounted weapons dating from around 1740. The castle stands on the original site of the village of Inverary. However, when Archibald Campbell, who was the 3rd Duke of Argyll, decided to build the castle, he had the village demolished and rebuilt a mile away so that it would not impinge on the castle's outlook. And this is that town of Inverary, which is actually just a short walk from the castle. We had time to walk around the charming village, did some souvenir shopping, and then headed to the bus. It's approaching lunchtime, and we headed just about a mile up the road to this country hotel and restaurant for lunch. We then drove through the Highlands, stopping for a picture to the village of Luss with its stone cottages and pretty flowers. The village sits on the west shore of Loch Lomond. We were told that in Gaelic, the name of the village, Luss, means plant or herb, and in spring and summer, it is a riot of color from roses and wildflowers. This, then, is Loch Lomond, which is famous in song and legend, and there are the banks of Loch Lomond. The wee bonny banks of Loch Lomond. Aren't you glad I don't have much footage of the lake area, or I'd sing the whole song? Up a block from the lake was this parish church. Had a beautiful stained glass window. And in the front was the burial ground. We then walked on back to the bus. And we passed this B&B, which was just reeking with flowers. Then it was on the bus and back to the ship. That night, we had dinner, went to a show. That night, some others on our ship went to what they called the military tattoo. It was over in Edinburgh, which required a 2-hour bus ride each way from our ship. We learned that it's an incredibly popular event that's held each year during a few weeks in August, where thousands of spectators gather amid the outdoor setting of Edinburgh's castle to be entertained by military precision drill teams with massed bands, bagpipes, and drums, all representing various international Scottish regiments. In addition, there are traditional Scottish dancing and the enactments of historical events. We talked to a number of passengers that had attended the tattoo, and each one said it was marvelous. Well, that ended the day for all of us. We got up the next morning, and here it is, Wednesday, August 17th. Today we're going to visit Kirkwall, which is in the Orkney Islands and is located only 10 miles from the northern tip of Scotland. It's just a little after 7 a.m. and we've just anchored here at Kirkwall. Today we're going to tour Balfour Castle, which is on one of the 67 islands that make up the Orkney chain. There's one of the tenders that took us from our ship over to Kirkwall. The weather wasn't very good. There was rain and then drizzle. That's the little harbor. We had a few minutes before we would catch our ferry, so we window shopped in the small village. Here is the ferry that will be boarding for a 25-minute ride to Shippensay Island, and that's where the Balfour Castle is located. It ran several times a day, taking food and materials over to the island. Our course to the island took us right past the Golden Princess. There's our first view of the Shippensay Island and the Balfour Castle. They said that the Balfour Castle was called a calendar house since it was planned to incorporate the following features: 7 turrets, 12 exterior doors, 52 rooms, and 365 panes of glass. The history and ownership of the castle is quite interesting. You'll hear this story from our guide, who with her brother own the castle today.
This end of the village dates back to the late 1700s when the first Mr. Balfour came here, and this end of the village was added on in Victorian times when David Balfour built the castle. So this predates everything else here. So this was just the beginning of the Balfour family moving here, but then David Balfour, who built the castle, inherited the family wealth. So he came here to settle permanently, and he arrived with all the family money. So when he settled here, he was able to build the castle, extend the village for more estate workers, build the home farm at the end of the straight road. He bought this whole island gradually, so that eventually he was landlord or laird of the whole of this island. He started a ferry service, built a school, started the hospital over in town, so he did have a big impact on everything that was going on here. So the Balfour family came to an end in the 1950s when the last guy who was here was the last in line on this side of the family, so he was supposed to produce more Balfours to keep the family going, but he had 4 wives and no children. Oh. So I guess he failed, basically. And I met him when I was about 8, and I got creeps. You know, he gave me the creeps at that point, so obviously there was something a bit strange about him, so we know why he didn't have any children. Anyway, so when he died, my parents had already taken over the farm, and so we decided to come and take over the castle, because otherwise it was already going down maintenance-wise. It would be sold off, and all the contents would be sold and stripped out. So my father decided to take it over. My dad came to Orkney at the end of the war. He was a Polish officer during the war who had escaped from the Russians and ended up in Britain with the Polish troops, met my mum. It's a long story, but eventually they came to be up here and decided to settle here and ended up in the castle. So here we are 40 years later. So it is still a private home, but we run it as a hotel as well. So we'll get moving. A general store that sells stamps or anything, that's it down there on the seashore, so that's our one island shop and post office. So pretty much here we have, I guess, everything we need on this island. The island is 7 miles by 3 miles, and it's more or less a farming community, but we have 6 ferries a day so that people can commute into town to work if they have to. All the bigger kids go into school every day on the ferry. The population here is just over 300, and we have a primary school here, which means you can stay here until you're 12. We have a full-time doctor and nurses. We have a shop, post office, restaurant, pub, church, and no policemen. There's no crime worth mentioning on the island apart from a bit of late night drinking. That's about the only thing that goes on here, so nothing serious happens. So it is a very good community in which to live. I think most people find it quite surprising that there's anywhere in the world where they don't need policemen these days.
That's right.
Right. And that doesn't give you license to do anything funny, because we can, if anything happens, we just phone the police in Kirkwall, they pick you up off the ferry. So.
How many guests can a hotel accommodate?
About 12 is the maximum. And we do a lot of weddings and things like that. Just very briefly then to tell you about the trees. I don't know how much you've seen of the Orkney Islands, but you probably gathered it's pretty treeless. So there aren't that many areas of forest at all up here, and it's basically because it's a windy part of the world and trees don't grow very well. But what the Balfours did here was plant enough area of trees so that they shelter each other. So there's something like 30 acres of trees here altogether, which is quite a good sized piece of woodland. And it's really designed as part of the landscape of the castle, so it shelters the house and the gardens, which we'll see in a minute. But bear in mind that most of these trees are probably over 100 years old, and this is as tall as they've got, because the wind is just constantly taking the top, just like a haircut. It's kind of taking the tops off the trees the whole time. And that's not just in the winter, it's in the summer as well. And all the salt in the air in the winter tends to burn, because it really is very salty being so near the sea, so it burns off a lot of the growth. So we're very lucky to have any trees. And what that gentleman was asking about wildlife, because we're a remote island, we don't have any ground predators. There are no deer, no snakes, no stoats, no badgers, no foxes, no squirrels, no anything. So, well, I was going to say that it's a very safe place for birds as a result of having no animals. So all the bird life here is pretty much left alone. So you can have ground nesting birds, and there's lots of ferns for cover, and so it's a real good place for wildlife.
We then followed our guide into a walled garden area that had both produce and flowers.
You see that we have a reasonable climate. We don't have to worry about irrigation, that's one thing. So you can grow all kinds of things throughout the summer months. We've got lots of fruit and summer crops here, and then down below in the deeper ground is where we grow all our winter vegetables. Also, you've got plenty of space to use against the wall, and this is what the Victorians did with apple trees in the old days. You plant them against the wall, and then you tie them to the wall and prune them in a certain way so that they use the wall space, and the apples get ripened against the stone wall. And it's just a very clever way of growing apples up here, because out in the open the wind would destroy the branches. And these are all the original old-fashioned Victorian apples, and they taste delicious. So the window in the corner was the gardener's bedroom. This was the head gardener's house. And he took a lot of time to train one branch from that tree to grow right around his window. So he would tie it and prune it and then bend it round so that he had an eating apple all the way round his window.
We then followed our guide through several extensive walled garden areas to the castle. We're now inside in one of the main hallways. This light fixture was certainly unique. Our guide said that prior to the house being wired with electricity, gas was used for lighting and flames came out of the antlers. Just off this hall was the library.
Over 2,000 books, and I am ashamed to say I've never read any of them, but I have looked at them and I've dusted them and I've noted what they are and put them back. We've all kind of worked with them over the years. Basically, in those days, the Balfours were a well-read, well-educated family, so they had the book collection before they built the castle. So, you know, a lot of families in those days who were newly rich, if you like, they would build a house like this, build a library and go out and buy new books. But of course the Balfours were already well read, so most of these books predate the castle.
The bookcase had a secret door, a secret passageway that would lead you into another room. This was a study in the corner of the library. We're now in one of the drawing rooms, and that's a solarium off of the drawing room. This fancy table was at the other end of the drawing room. We're now in the dining room, and here they served us tea with home-baked scones and shortbread. On the lower floor was a chapel where they held weddings. Adjacent to it was a gift shop where I bought a book, and this lovely little girl wrapped it for me.
And you, See you later. Bye.
And what's your name?
My name is Gail.
Oh, well, that's neat. We're going to show our granddaughter your picture. That completed the tour, and they had a little van that would take you back to the pier if you so desired. It was raining, however, I elected to walk back down through the garden area, retracing the path that we took on our way up to the castle. Here's our ferry, ready to take us back to Kirkwall.
Your attention is drawn to the passenger emergency instruction notices which are displayed in the passenger spaces and the muster station.
There's our ship anchored off of Kirkwall. There's the tender that will take us back to the Golden Princess. When we got back on the ship, went to the cabin, we heard the captain talking, turned on our TV.
And heading out of this very well protected anchorage here off Cape Cod Wall. Once we've spun around, we'll head to the north for a mile or so, and then we turn right 90 odd degrees to go out through the entrance. And as we do so, we'll be passing Balfour Castle, where a few of you went for tea today, and you thoroughly enjoyed that experience. And it is a house in a wonderful, beautiful setting, even on a murky day like today. Built by Italians and is presently owned by a Pole. But you'll see that on the port side as we go out, and then shortly after that we'll be disembarking our pilot port side, and then it's pedal to the metal up to 21 knots for our run down to Edinburgh and our anchorage off South Queensferry in the Firth of Forth. We'll be embarking our pilot at 5 o'clock in the morning, and should be anchored with the boats ready for you by 7 o'clock. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, get yourselves dried out, warmed up, and enjoy the sail away.
Welcome to South Queensferry, which is one of the closest ports to Edinburgh. Today this is your tour to the Scottish borders, visiting Dryborough Abbey and Poores Castle. My name's Wilma. I'm going to be your guide today, and we have driving our coach is Joe. And so we're going to spend the day together looking at the southern part of Scotland, which is known as the Scottish borders. I want you to sit back and relax. We have a journey of about an hour and a half to our first stop, so it's time to just relax and enjoy the scenery.
Our first stop was here at Dryburgh Abbey, which is one of 4 abbeys founded by David I in the 12th century. Our guide told us about the order that lived and worshipped here. They were not monks, but regular canons. That is, priests who lived together in community with strict rules. Our guide now tells about the order.
And this religious order was founded by St. Norbert, who came to Scotland in the 6th century. He was a contemporary of Columbus, who brought Christianity to Scotland. And so Norbert established this particular type of religious community because he was very unhappy with what had existed before. The Cistercians, the Augustinians, he felt that their type of religious life was not strict enough. And so he introduced his own, based on the Cistercian rule, but in a more stricter fashion. And so they built this wonderful community here, where you're standing in the church of the community. And this is the nave of the church, which is where any lay people could worship. And then they would be separated from where the canons would worship by a rood screen, which went right across the church. And in this case, it was would have been partially of stone and wood. And the word rood means cross. So at the top of a rood screen was where you had the cross, and that's why it got its name. It was this partitioning between the religious community, those who serve God by living and working here, and the lay people, the rest of those who came to worship. So they would worship in the choir, which was beyond the rood screen, which is this end of the church, the other end. And that's, of course, where the high altar was situated, because all churches were built in the shape of a cross, and the altar always was at the eastern end of the church, because that faced Jerusalem. Any Christian church has an altar at the eastern end. But then, of course, it wasn't just the church that was important to the community. They had to live here. So they needed all the buildings to sustain their time in this area. So to the south of the church, and looking through those arched windows, would have been exactly where that green is. That would have been the garth, and that's the garden in the middle of the cloisters.
We then walked around the grounds, and our guide pointed out that this is where Sir Walter Scott is buried. She told us that the abbey was a frequent victim of border wars between Scotland and England, and it was finally destroyed in 1545. We're now in what they call the chapter house, second only in importance to the church, and it was where the business of the abbey was conducted. Tasks handed out, sins confessed, and discipline applied. And the acoustics here were phenomenal. They had a record playing and listened to it. Beautiful. We noticed that some of the same symbols that were carved at the Grey Abbey were also present here, and that is the cross, as Lois pointed out previously. We next visited the Fleurs Castle, which dates back to the early 1700s. This shows the layout of the castle. It was taken from a brochure. The castle is the largest inhabited castle in Scotland, and it's the home of the Duke and Duchess of Roxburgh and their family. It was built in the early 1700s. We were not allowed to take pictures of the inside, so again, these were taken from a brochure and illustrate the opulence of the interior. We have just exited the castle. We'll be going through that portal and are now viewing the castle from the backside, which overlooks an extensive lawn and sheep grazing area. The costs for maintaining a castle in grounds of this size is extremely expensive. Therefore, the family owners resort to tours and selling of all kinds of gifts and food and books in order to pay for the upkeep. That completed our tour of Fleurs Castles. We're now in a small village in the border country. We're there on the square, and we're going to have lunch here in this hotel. We were served a traditional lunch. We then got back on the bus and went to Edinburgh for a panoramic view of the city. And gee, was it crowded. We had time to stroll the streets and browse for souvenirs and just enjoy the sights and sounds of the city. We're back on the bus, and I thought our traffic was bad.
Edinburgh,
as we were bused back to the ship, we got a good view of the Edinburgh Castle. That's where the group from the ship went the other night to see the tattoo. We're now back at the port, and that's the bridge that we saw this morning as we arrived. There's our ship anchored in the harbor. We were wondering what all that scaffolding was for, and we were told that they were painting the structure. I was amazed at how efficient the ship was in using these tenders to transport several thousand people to and from the ship to shore with very little waiting. We're at our cabin, the TV's on, and the captain's talking.
We're just about to hoist our last tender, close the front door. We'll let go the tug. Just out of interest, if you're wondering about that, it's a port requirement that sitting at anchor here in the Firth of Forth, we have to have that tug tied to the stern because of the tides here, and as a safety precaution. We've had the pilot on the bridge all day, so he's ready for home. We'll be weighing the anchor shortly and then spinning around and heading out down the Firth of Forth to the open North Sea. It's quite pretty if you're not having dinner or something. Just to look out, particularly if you've got binoculars. Edinburgh, Leith will be off on our starboard side a few minutes after we turn around. And then after that we'll be disembarking the pilot in about an hour's time or so. With that, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the sail away. Have a very pleasant evening. And we'll look forward to a nice relaxing day at sea tomorrow when we can all get on with our packing.
After the sail away, it was a dinner and a show. Off to bed, got up the next morning, and it's Saturday, August 20th. Today will be our last full day on the ship, and it'll be a sea day. Going to be traveling from South Queensbury down to Southampton, where we will disembark the ship. It's now morning. It looks overcast out, but the seas are calm, and that's good. In reading the Princess Patter, there was a tour this morning that we thought would be very interesting, and that's the visit to the galley. We took the tour and enjoyed it, but I didn't take my video camera, so I've taken the liberty of including here some footage from Princess Cruises' video covering the galley and their food services.
A staff of 215 works around the clock, feeding nearly 2,600 guests and over 1,100 members of the crew. On a typical voyage, we load over 120 tons of fresh food. That includes 3,000 pounds of rice, 5,000 pounds of steak, and we serve 8,000 slices of pizza every cruise.
You no doubt heard the narrator say that they prepare meals for over 2,600 passengers. That's the average number, since the ship actually would hold 3,100 passengers if completely full. Following our visit to the galley, we went to the backstage tour of the Princess Theatre. I did have my camera this time, and will show you some of the candid shots that I took. However, to give you a better overview of the theater, here are some excerpts from the Princess video on this subject.
Welcome to the Princess Theatre. Here, great talent and cutting-edge technology combine to provide you with spectacular award-winning production shows. A crew of 8 technicians are responsible for running and maintaining the theatre, often setting up and striking scenery more than once a day. The scenery, designed especially for Princess Cruises, not only looks stunning on stage, but is also easily changed, stored and removed, making way for each night of unique and exciting entertainment. Over 200 lights allow for some amazing light displays, with almost an unlimited number of colours and patterns. Our 52-channel soundboard can send signals to 36 separate speakers around the Princess Theatre, producing 20,000 watts of power. An additional automated 16-channel board is used to bring you the sounds of our unmatched showband. Our production shows are developed and produced by Princess Cruises, using some of the most innovative directors, choreographers and designers in the business. Professional artisans whose work can be seen in the London's West End, Broadway and Las Vegas. As you watch our talented cast of singers and dancers perform on stage, the backstage technicians are performing as well. They help with costume changes, prepare props and move scenery, all while the show unfolds in front of you. The Princess Theatre provides a superb backdrop to the most spectacular entertainment on the high seas.
Now to a couple of clips that I took that I think you'll find interesting. One is the mechanization of the lift or elevator that brings the cast up from the deck below.
So the lift's going down. This is a slope lid, and it will go down and go back in under the stage on the lift ready. So as soon as this lid opens, it will hit a sensor. Just run the strip around the entry on the bottom of the black pieces. If you hit that will stop now. So if the dancer comes up and has his toe over the side, the lift will stop immediately. Good for safety, but then it takes about 10 minutes.
We had a very interesting interview with one of the dancers in the backstage dressing room.
Costumes are, it's kind of like the rail at the cleaners,
we all have we each have our section with our name labeled on it for our costumes for the show. And we come down and we just move this little button. And all the costumes come down and they go up. And it's really convenient because it saves space. It actually goes up 3 stories.
Wow.
All the costumes just go right up on this rail. Extremely convenient. See, all the costumes come down and go up. All of us have our own section, so it's easy to keep organized like that. As dancers, all of our cabins, we live right behind this bulkhead, this wall right here. Our cabins, there's 2 to a cabin, it's bunk beds. And because they're so close, there's no excuse for being late, right? So, literally, we can roll out of bed and be here on time. No, but it's good for us. And Princess treats the dancers really well. We have passenger status. We're allowed to eat upstairs in Horizon Court or go to the gym. We're allowed to socialize with you guys. We only work in the evenings, so it's good for us. It's a good experience. Does anybody have any questions about the shows, about how we're hired, about?
Yeah, how long are you on the ship for? Is it...
Okay. Princess hires dancers for, our contract is 6 months. So we fly to Los Angeles for 1 month. We learn all the shows that are on that particular ship, and then we fly to the ship as a team. And then we stay on the ship as a team for 6 months. And then after that, if we want to take another contract, they send a list of ships when they leave, and then we can either sign up or go on to different things if we want.
As a group all
As
the
a group.
time?
Yeah, no. You break up as a group after that contract, because then people might want to do different things or go on different ships, but then a totally different group flies to Los Angeles, learns the shows, and then flies out to that.
You're all independent contractors, so there's no benefits or anything?
Yeah, we're all hired through Princess. We have medical benefits, but that's it. As long as we're on the ship. If we were to hurt ourselves on the ship, we're definitely covered 100%. But as soon as we leave the ship, if something happens, no, we're not.
What happens if someone does get injured on the ship? Do they replace you, or do they carry on one shore?
Yeah. Well, it just so happened about 2 months ago, one of our dancers hurt his back, and what we did was we reblocked the show, whereas the line captain and myself, Jason, we sat down and watched the show, and we took him out of each number and just tried to close the gap so that the audience couldn't tell that, oh, wow, there's a lot of people on this side, and it was missing on this side. But we just, we tried to close the gaps and make it look like a normal show. But what he did was we sent him to the doctor. What it was is just one of his muscles was spasming, and he just needed to rest. So for one cruise, he was out of all the shows and just rested. So we didn't have to go through the whole process of sending him home, sending somebody else, because then that would mean we had to rehearse them back into this new person, then get all the costuming, and so that's a big process. So luckily, it wasn't a major injury.
Did rough seas?
I'm sorry.
Do you perform in really rough seas, or do you have special training for that?
Oh no, just like you guys, when it's really rough, we have to spread our legs and bend our knees, and hold on. If you saw Words and Music, there was a couple times in Words and Music where like the ship will hit a wave and you see all of us go like this, But we just have to do it, you guys. But after 6 months, we're used to it now. We have our sea legs, so as soon as the boat rocks, we're ready. Yeah, we grab with our toes. I see some hands.
When you do a handover, are the costumes refitted? Do they bring out their own costumes, or what happens?
No. When we do a handover like this, we take all of our old costumes. They're cleaned, they're dry cleaned, and then we have seamstresses come on for about 2 weeks. And those seamstresses take our costumes and refit them to the new dancers. And then the seamstresses leave. But after that, we're required for the maintenance of all of our own costumes. If a zipper breaks, if buttons come off, Velcro, elastic, all those things. Yeah, but no, the costumes are clean and then refitted to the new cast.
What does all the
rehearsal? Do you rehearse during?
I'll get to you guys, yes?
You only rehearse the first month in LA? You don't rehearse on the ship?
No. She asked us about rehearsals. We have 1 month in Los Angeles where we learn the shows, and then we fly to the ship. And then we have a 2-week handover where we're put into the shows, and then as the old cast leaves. But after that, we don't have any rehearsal time because the cruise director likes to fill the theater with, lectures for you guys and movies for the passengers. So there's really no time for us to rehearse after that 2 weeks, after that allotted time for us. So, but we are required to, of course, rehearse on our own and keep up to date on what's going on, things that are happening in the show, things like that. But no, after that 2-week rehearsal period, we don't have any time in the theater. I'm sorry. Wait, I'm sorry.
How do they do the auditions?
The auditions, Princess doesn't have auditions anymore. What they do is they have a contact person. We're required to send in a video of our performance, of our experience, or if someone's just coming out of college, some kicks and turns and things like that, and then she'll evaluate and then contact that person like that. But the contact information is right on the internet. Yeah, I saw your hand, sir.
In the Scandinavian cruise, there were about 6 shows. How many do you have in your repertoire, and how often?
On this ship, there are 4 different shows plus the Welcome Aboard show. So when we flew to Los Angeles, we learned all 4 shows plus the Welcome Aboard show, and those shows stays on this ship. One of the shows, Country Roads, is leaving because it's an old show and it's not getting really good reviews anymore. So that show's leaving, and I think they're going to bring something else on. Yeah, but that's how long the shows stay here on this ship, and but all those shows stay here on this ship. They don't travel with the different groups. Yeah, I suppose.
How long do the dancers usually last? Do they just last one season, or do they repeat?
Oh, she's asking how long does like dancer turnover. Well, just like every job, we have evaluations. We have a midterm and a final evaluation. If we're doing a good job, if we are professional on stage, professional off stage within each other, if we're good with the passengers, then that all comes up on our evaluation. And then, of course, we're rehired, and we don't have to re-audition, if you want to continue. But if you want to, if some people see this just as a stepping stone, so they might just come and do a couple contracts, travel around and experience the ship thing, and then move on to maybe another land job. But no, there are some people who, Jason, my boss, he's 33 and he's been doing it for a while. He really enjoys it. So some people see it as a stepping stone. Some people see it as a way to make money as your career, and then maybe
Thank you.
else.
We're going on a Princess ship next month. Will there be the same shows, or will that be different?
What ship are you going on?
Sea Princess.
The Sea Princess has all different shows.
Oh.
They have a different Welcome Aboard show. They have a great new Piano Man show, and they do a show called Tribute.
Oh.
Yeah, you'll see different shows in that ship. Princess, what they have. Princess has some old shows and some new shows, and what they do is they try to spice it up. Yeah, well, they don't move them around, but they try to think. Okay, if someone's going to go on, if there are 2 ships going in Alaska, they might put the same shows on those 2 ships, thinking that people aren't going to go on one ship in Alaska and another ship in Alaska. They think you're going to go on one ship in Alaska and then a different ship in the Caribbean, right? So then they might have. That's why they have different shows in Alaska, different shows in the Caribbean, different shows in the British Isles. Yeah, they try to think of it like that. Yeah. Sorry, yes?
You don't have any food restrictions because you're on a ship for a long time. Such good food and you'll also
Food? I'm sorry, wait.
Do you have any food restrictions?
Food restrictions?
Because...
Oh no, I eat whatever I want to eat. I do. You'll see me up in Horizon Court like 3 times a day because I'm up there eating. But the shows keep us very active. We're always in shape. You might see us up at the gym. Working out with each other, but no, we don't have any weight restrictions. We're not weighed like other cruise lines. We're allowed to eat whatever we want, but of course we try to encourage each other to work out and stay healthy and eat the right foods. Yeah. And thank everyone for coming and supporting the shows. It was great to see you guys out there. It was great to have you guys aboard, and hopefully we'll see you guys on another cruise. Yeah.
After the backstage tour, we went to the dining room for lunch, then back to the cabin. Lois did some packing, and here it is near the end of the day, and gosh, it's been raining, but we're going to go down and have our last dinner on the ship.
Look at that, huh? Gotcha. This is turkey night. Is it good down there? Delicious, huh? Oh, that's good.
Do I have to have good manners here?
Yeah, there goes that.
You do good. You do good.
You know what? Put that. Yeah.
Here comes the dessert, Baked Alaska.
Oh, yeah.
There is only one size of Big Alaska. It's my size. You see the chef? He's quite a big guy. Trust me, he's very mad whenever I bring something back.
Yeah. So you want to bring an empty plate back?
I don't want to make him mad. There you go.
Well, after that good dinner and good fellowship with our table mates, we headed back to the room, and here in true Love Boat fashion was our chocolate on the pillow. But also we had the disembarkation information, and we're going to be one of the first off. So we put our bags out, and after a short night's sleep, here it is, Saturday, August 20th. And today we're going to be heading to the Heathrow Airport for our flight home. It's morning, early morning, and our TV shows that the sun is coming up, and here's a look from the outside. We then headed on down to one of the waiting rooms. They had all kinds of goodies for you to eat, and look who's here, Joe and Cheryl.
Is that breakfast? Yeah. Gee, you're up early, huh?
Bright and early.
Just like home.
No, not just like home.
We're now ashore, and it's time to find your bags.
The final morning.
Okay, good morning.
With your luggage.
We're getting our last piece now.
Okay. Have a good trip home.
Thank you. You too. See you on the bus.
All right.
There's the buses, and I always seem to fall behind to take a last-minute picture, and there's Lois saying, "Let's go." We're on the bus, and as you can see, it's 6:46 a.m. We're now stopped at an exit to Heathrow Airport, and there's a static model of the SST there. Here's the airport. What a crowd. 8:25, it's taken us just an hour and a half to get here. We had no problems checking in. We're out on the concourse, and that's our airplane, named Cosmic Girl. It's 11 a.m., and we've departed the gate for the active runway. We're now on our takeoff roll. There's the tower. And there's liftoff. We're on our way to San Francisco, which is 5,400 miles and will take us approximately 11 elapsed hours. We've now been in flight for about 4 hours, and the monitor shows that we have 7 hours to go. We're flying at a speed of 576 knots. The wind speed is 61 knots. We're flying at an altitude of approximately 33,000 feet, and we have just about 4,000 miles to our destination. The display we were just looking at changed and showed our track as being over Iceland. After some lunch, a snooze, and reading some material, we're now 1 hour and 55 minutes from San Francisco. And we're flying at an altitude of about 38,000 feet. Our position is in Montana with a direct route to San Francisco. And now we've just touched down in San Francisco.
International Airport, where the local time here is 20 minutes to 2 in the afternoon. That's 8 hours behind UK time. Ladies and gentlemen, for your own safety.
As this trip comes to its end, fond memories come to mind, not only of the places that we visited, but of the people that we met, who by their presence added so much enjoyment to our trip. So it is with sincere thanks that we acknowledge our shipmates, Steve and Claire from the San Francisco Bay Area, and our table mates who we thoroughly enjoyed dining with, namely Joe and Cheryl from Indiana, and Bill and Barb from Ontario, Canada. It's our hope that our paths will cross again real soon. Until then, God bless each of you.